Hello, fellow travelers and friends old and new. Ben here with Ben's Travel Tips. Today's travel tip is going to be on traveling on the cheap. So there's three main expenses that we have traveling abroad, and those would be transportation costs, food costs, and lodging costs. So this video is going to focus on a couple of ways on each category to save some money, and that way you can, maybe extend your trip out a bit longer or have some extra money for some splurges like some local cuisine, or if you wanted to go have some beers or something, or maybe even something to bring back for friends and family. So we'll just start out with one of the main ones, which obviously is transportation costs. You have to get there. So when we're talking about airlines, a tip would be to try not to go during peak times. And I know that's hard if you have a traditional job. You know, you have time off during the holidays and stuff, but so does everybody else, and that's when everybody else is going to be wanting to travel. So if at all possible, you can do on off-peak times, you're going to save a significant amount on travel costs on airline fees and such. So I would suggest traveling in times that, maybe springtime, maybe times in summer, depending on where you're going. If it's super hot, a lot of people try to avoid areas like that and then try and go in the fall and the spring, but it just really depends. So if you do a little bit of research, you can figure out what your local area that you're trying to go to, what their times are, and you could book accordingly. So some of the best times to book a flight is 60 to 90 days prior. Some airlines allow up to 12 to 18 months prior, so you'll just have to look on their website and see how far in advance that they're booking. But if you do find that you're going to book, some of the best times to book is on Sundays and in the midweek. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays seem to have the cheapest prices. Another thing that you want to keep in mind is luggage. So like I said in my other video, I try and travel as light as I possibly can with just a backpack that'll fit in an overhead compartment. So yes, you may have a international flight that allows you free luggage on the way there, but remember, you're going to be carrying that luggage everywhere with you, and you're going to have to store it somewhere. You're also going to have to take local transportation and such that you have to remember. They might charge you for luggage going to different countries if you're taking a train or if you're taking a EasyJet or whatever. So the lighter the better. So I really recommend keeping it to where it's just a carry-on. And then the added bonus, obviously, is nobody ever loses your luggage. So once you're at your destination, then obviously there's travel that you have to do on location. So my recommendation is definitely stay away from taxis and rental cars. Those are two big costs that you really don't need. The local transportation everywhere other than the United States, of course, is stellar. So I highly recommend you getting on the bus, the local bus. Anybody that has subways, those are excellent ways to get around that are very cheap. And a lot of places, such as in Australia, for example, you can get what they call an Opal card, where you can purchase $20 or whatever their currency is, and that gives you discounts when you use the card. That a normal, like let's say that the fare is $2, right? But if you're using the Opal card, it turns into $1.50. So there's advantages to using their local cards as well as using the public transportation itself. So if you're in, let's say you're in Europe, a lot of people talk about the rail pass. The rail pass is decent. That is if you're going to be using the rail all the time. So I've noticed that a la carte rail fees for myself it's a lot cheaper if I do it separately, because I'm not going to 15 or 20 countries over there. So it's a lot easier just to use the local transportation than use a rail, or they have another thing called the Flixbus. I don't know if you've ever heard or seen of these. It's a big lime green bus, and they are excellent. Not only are they on time and they drop you off at city centers and pick you up at city centers, but they also have free Wi-Fi, and they're very comfy. They have reclining seats. They have a place to plug in to charge your phone and things like that. So, and for instance, I think I went from Slovakia to Prague in the Czech Republic for $10. So it's very reasonable, and I highly recommend that you take advantage of these things. If you take an EasyJet or a train, you're going to probably paying $100. So Flixbus is definitely something to keep in mind. Let's say you go to some place like London, definitely use the Underground, and you can also buy tickets ahead of time on the Underground, like the Opal card as well. That saves money. If you don't care to do that, I mean, it's fairly inexpensive to travel in places like London. You just use your debit card and you tap as you go. You don't have to go to the ticket counter and buy a ticket for anything. Basically, you tap on, you get on the train that you need, and then when you leave, you tap off, and it's done by zone. So if you stay in zone 1, it's X amount of dollars. If you go out to zone 3, it's X amount of dollars. That's how it's done. So the other thing about places in Europe and London and the UK is the buses are way different than what you experience here in the United States. Like pretty much everybody takes the bus or the subway or the Underground, it's called over there. So you have basically everybody from doctors and just to students. There's the whole walk of life on there, and it's the main way to get around. And honestly, you could probably live over there without even having a car because it's so good. And if you use the bus system, it's just as good, and it's just as cheap. So I would highly recommend using those to save money. So the second one that I wanted to talk about was food. So it's one of the main important parts of traveling abroad is the food culture. So I do not want to chase anybody away from trying new food items from restaurants and local eateries and things. But of course that gets expensive to go to a restaurant every single night. So I like to scope out, ahead of time what they like, what their cuisine is like, and what are some of the main things that they're known for, and I'll seek out a restaurant that provides that meal. It has a lot of stars on Google or Yelp or whatever you want to look up, and definitely immerse yourself into that scene. But obviously it gets expensive, so going to the grocery store is one of the best ways to go. Groceries outside of the U.S. are fairly inexpensive, so you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck. You can get, things that are non-perishable, or, even some perishable items that you're going to eat right away for a tenth of the cost it's going to be to go to a restaurant. And then you can put some things in your backpack and some snacks and things that, if you're outside of a tourist area or inside of a tourist area, that whether they jacking up the prices a little bit on some lunch or things like that, you always have a little backup to go to, a roll or they make some pastries that have ham and cheese in them, and they're very, very portable. You can just wrap them up and put them in your bag, and it's a nice little lunch, and it's maybe less than $1. So those are definitely the hot tip on food. So here in America, in Europe, we're considered nomadic eaters because we get into our car and we go through a drive-through and we have one hand on our hamburger and the other hand on the steering wheel. Well, you got to remember local cultures, they don't do that, especially when you're in places like Europe. especially in Italy, for example. If you're in Italy and you go to dinner, expect to sit there for 2 to 3 hours, because their custom is friends and family, and dinner is part of that. And so if you're expecting to go to a restaurant and get in 15 minutes and out, then that's just not going to happen. So you don't want to be rude. You want to respect everybody's culture while you're there, and you don't want to look like that ugly American. So if you do want to do something like that, and you want to save a couple of bucks and still hit something, a restaurant that has something that you want to try, then you go for takeaway, it's called. So takeaway is actually going to be cheaper, and this is even with coffee shops and such. When you do takeaway, you don't really get a chair. You stand at the counter. You tell them you want takeaway, and then it's probably, almost half the price. And then you can eat and drink at your leisure and leave at your leisure, instead of, a big long 2-hour session of dinner. But I mean, obviously, if you want to go and you met some friends and stuff, it's a great time, and it's a great experience for everybody to talk and exchange stories and what they've done and where they're going. So definitely don't want to chase you away from the 2-hour dinner, but I just want you to be aware. So train stops, grocery stores, all these places have little, almost like the train stops have like a little bodega, kind of similar to something in New York, where you can get some cheap eats and things like that. So definitely want to check that out if you're looking to stay on the cheap on the food. So the third and final thing that I want to talk about is the lodging, of course. So the big expense is lodging. So let's say you want to go to 5, 6, 7 different countries while you're there. Well, staying in a $200 a night hotel for 90 days, you can do the math. That's just not feasible. So I would highly recommend a hostel. I prefer hostels. Number one, because you can, for instance, I got a hostel in Vietnam for a whole week. It's $100. So if you can imagine trying to do a whole week in a hotel, you're talking $1,400 somewhere, right? So the hostel is great for 2 reasons. Obviously, the price, it's cheap on the wallet. But number 2, you meet lots of fellow travelers, and I've made so many friends over the years in a hostel that I still talk to today from 10 or 15 years ago, that we've traveled together. You meet them there, and you do day trips and ask them where they've been, and you get all sorts of cool recommendations on places to travel and the places they've been locally and places to eat. It's just a great networking opportunity. Another thing, if you're not comfortable with doing something, sorry, there's somebody going by here with a big loud boombox system. So if you decide that you don't want to do the hostel thing because you have to share a room with others, you can definitely do something like an Airbnb ahead of time. Maybe like a cottage rental or something, but those are still going to be significantly more than the hostel. So they're going to be less than a hotel, but more than a hostel. So if you're going solo, probably the hostel's the way to go. If you're going with 4 people, 4 friends, so there's 4 or 5 of you, yeah, maybe a Vrbo or a Airbnb might be up your alley, because then you guys can split the cost 5 ways, and you have your own private residence, and you have places to cook and things. So another nice thing about staying in a in a hostel is some of them give you free breakfast or free dinner, so that's always nice on the pocketbook. You get a meal in your belly before you head out for the exploring. And the location that they're in are usually they're usually located in city centers, so you can basically walk right out and see some of the things you want to see within a mile, and they're usually always by train stops and the local transportation. So if something's out farther, you're basically, within 5-10 minutes of the travel destination that you want because they're located right on a train or a bus route. So some tips I'd say when you do choose a place, if you do choose a hostel or you choose something else, is, you know, some of those prices sound too good to be true, because they are. Because if you look, they're 5, 10, 15 miles out from what you want to see. So yeah, maybe you save a couple of bucks on the room. That sounds pretty great. But then when you decide that you had to go into town for 15 miles to and from every day, it just starts adding up, adding up, adding up. So make sure that you look at the things that you want to see, then look at the areas where you want to stay. And I highly suggest staying in areas like city centers or something right outside of a bus line or a train line or a tram line, etc., because you don't want to spend all your money and time trying to get back and forth into the city center or the area that you want to see. So those are 3 tips on traveling on the cheap. If you have any other suggestions or questions about certain things to save some money on the travel, I would be happy to hear about them or answer any questions in the comments below. So if you found these to be beneficial, I would really appreciate you liking this post and subscribing to this vlog, and we can keep these going and make sure that everybody is well informed on their way out and having a great time and saving a lot of money. So I appreciate you guys watching. It's Ben from Ben's Travel Tips here, and signing out, and hope to see you on the next video. Have a great day.